Hey everyone, hello, good afternoon. I'm sorry about this. I damaged my voice last month and couldn't speak, so this will help me get through today and the workshop tomorrow that I'm doing. Can everyone hear okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Jason Gold. I'm an associate professor at Sagami Women's University in Tokyo, Japan. The last slide is a QR code for all the slides, so you don't need to take pictures. At the end, you can get everything. So today I'll be talking about part of my doctoral dissertation research about learner mindset meaning systems. First, just real quick about me. I'm originally from America, Philadelphia, one of the biggest cities, the first capital of America, close to New York. But for the last 12 years, I've been a university instructor in Japan. So I was in Hiroshima, then Nagoya, then 8 years Kobe University, Kobe, and last year finished doctorate, got a tenure position, and moved to Tokyo. So the research is from Japan, but the data is from the West. So my research interests are English language learning, so CLIL and EAP type classes, but also my main interest is education psychology and positive psychology, like many of you. And the past several years also CAL, computer assisted language learning, especially Gen AI and technology and how to use it for learning. So this is overview of today. I try to make this as practical and useful as possible. So as I do this, think about your teaching situation. Also, if you have children, this is also applicable to teaching kids as well. So first, the issue that brought me to this topic is high stakes testing in schools. So the goal of education is to prepare students for both academic and future success. Historically, this has focused on students' cognitive skills, their intelligence, their abilities, through things like standardized testing. In Japan, it's very entrance exam focused for university, GPA. So these standardized testing practices have become very influential in the world, kind of teaching to the test, it's called, where students are studying to get the score to get into the university. So a lot of research is showing that these days, both universities and employers are reporting that students are not prepared for the current world that we're in, the current demands. So this is having unintended negative effects on our students' well-being and engagement. So the belief that their scores, the test results reflect their lifelong intelligence and their future potential can demotivate students and lead to disengagement in the classroom. So there's too much of an emphasis on intelligence and results versus growth through effort and trying. So it's kind of a vicious negative cycle where students get a bad score, they feel discouraged, they study less, they involve themselves less in the classroom, they get lower performance, and it keeps repeating. So this leads to the theory, learner mindsets. This theory started in the 80s. It's grounded in a lot of major theories like attribution, goal theory, self-efficacy, on how people think about themselves and others. In a nutshell, basically, there's two types of learner mindsets. At one extreme is a fixed mindset, where people think intelligence or ability is fixed. You're born with what you have, you can't really do much to improve it. At the other extreme is growth mindset, where anything can be improved via effort and effective learning strategies. So these mindsets correlate with motivation, perseverance, academic achievement, and growth mindset has been shown to improve all these outcomes over the last few decades. Just a slide, maybe you want to take a picture. This is too much to explain quickly, but basically which mindset our students have affects many aspects of their education. So if students have a fixed mindset, many of them feel effort is negative because if you have natural talent, you don't need to try hard. It should be easy to get A's. Growth mindset, it's positive. Effort is how you improve and get better. Same with the goals our students have. Fixed mindset students focus on performance goals, getting a good score, showing how smart they are, or avoiding looking bad. They don't want to embarrass themselves. They don't want to ask questions in class. Growth mindset, it's learning mastery. They want to improve. And the same with setbacks and criticism and emotional resilience. Fixed mindset students tend to give up more easily. Growth mindset students are much more resilient, which is what we need in our students in the future. So the gaps in the literature, most of the research is cognitive perspective, psychology, looking at individuals, factors, mostly quantitative. The issue is this overlooks sociocultural influences. So how students think about themselves doesn't come from inside, it comes from their environment, from the culture, the people, what they say to them, how they teach them. Also, the majority of research is from a very interesting acronym called WEIRD, Western Educated Industrial Rich Democratic Populations, mainly the West, and it's applied to everyone. So there's very little research in other populations. Arnett showed 80% of study participants in APA journals come from weird Western populations, despite only being 12% of the global population. So we need more research on other cultures. So last, mindsets are not one or the other. It's a spectrum from strong to strong growth to mixed, and it differs in situations. So some students might have strong fixed mindset about learning English, but when it comes to math or history or drawing, they might have a growth mindset. So it changes by situation. So just study. So this study was Japanese university students at a high level, and it was mainly qualitative. I was interested in my Japanese university students. What are their beliefs about intelligence and effort, and also about mistakes and failures, and what in the social environment kind of led them to those beliefs. It came from a 16-week course. It was 115 students over 3 years. And the data was reflective writings each week, and also interview at the end of the semester. I used template analysis and purposeful sampling. So I was interested in not just the average responses, but also the unique samples, because qualitative treats every response equally. So I wanted to know the outliers and the average. So the first question is, how do mindsets shape students' intelligence? So I grouped this into growth and fixed mindsets, and then different themes. So the students' intelligence and effort beliefs were mostly growth mindset. So themes were like, intelligence can grow through effort. The more we learn, the more we knowledge. Intelligence doesn't ensure success. Effort is the major cause of academic success. And persistent leads to success. So constant effort leads to improvement. Perseverance is part of intelligence. There were some students who had a fixed mindset about intelligence, that it's inherited and unchangeable. So we have a limit to our intelligence, or effort can't overcome natural intelligence. So they talked about genetics, or smart parents have smart kids, things like that. Next, I looked at the key influential socializers, the KISS. Which people influenced them to have these beliefs? The most common answer was friends and peers, and it was both growth and fixed mindsets. So peers as role models, hardworking peers inspired students to work harder. Also ambitious peers motivated them to study harder, but there was a lot of negative social comparisons. So peer comparisons lower confidence, effort feels futile. Easy success of peers undermines their motivation. The other influential socializers, family, teachers, athletes, and media, were all positive in this case. They had positive effect on their beliefs about intelligence. So for family, mother influenced me the most. She never gave up. Her older brother was a hard worker. Father encourages me to try anything. Also, this is Japan, so a lot of anime and manga characters influence the students also. I know I'm going fast. The slides at the end you can get to check later. The second was, how do these systems shape students' responses to mistakes and to failures? So there were some students who had a growth mindset about mistakes, that mistakes are essential to learning. Every mistake is a stepping stone to success. They inform learning and they build resilience. So the most important thing is not being afraid to make mistakes. I feel like this is what's important in our students going forward. However, the vast majority of the students had a fixed mindset regarding mistakes. They saw it as only negative. So mistakes create social anxiety, fear of judgment lowers confidence, perfectionism increases pressure, school culture discourages mistakes. Fear of mistakes limits engagement in the classroom. They're afraid to participate in class. They don't want to ask questions or engage with the students. And failure was very similar. So for these students, failure is necessary for success. It's impossible to be successful in life without failing. Failure deepens character. Failure is important to manage emotions, how to recover quickly from negative situations. Failure teaches us how to do that. But again, the vast majority of the students had a fixed mindset for failures. They saw it as a personal deficiency, so it damages their self-worth. Perfectionism was an issue. Fear of disappointing others was an issue as well. So the next question was, how can a growth mindset be better fostered in our schools with our children? So these came from the students. The student-centered suggestions were, first, students need a clear academic identity or a sense of purpose. A lot of the students said things like, my desire to learn is weak because I have no dreams or no goals. So they need to have clear learning goals first. This will lead to growth mindset. So I can't know what I need to do to succeed, and big success becomes concrete by setting goals. The next suggestions were for teachers or institutions. So normalizing mistakes and failures was the most common response by the students, especially when children are young, in the early grades of schooling, before they get into the standardized testing culture, where everything is about grades and results and being smart. So children need a supportive, collaborative environment to be able to make mistakes, fail safely, and to get support. A lot of the students said that their classmates or even teachers laughed at them when they made mistakes when they were young, and this was kind of traumatizing and led to disengagement. So we need to reduce these. Also, the teacher needs to set an example. So we should share our mistakes with the students. We're not perfect either. So it's okay if we tell them about our mistakes, our failure experiences, so that then they know that they can also fail. Also, we should prioritize the process and effort and individual growth versus social comparison. Japan does rankings with other classmates, so they see how they're doing, which is, I think, terrible. So we should reduce evaluating ranking students. This leads to a fixed mindset. Instead, we should emphasize their efforts, their learning. So mainly having students compare themselves to their past selves. So how did you do last semester? How did you do last test? And are you improving? That's more important than how Sakura's doing or how Takashi's doing. Don't compare to other people. And as teachers, we need to provide better support when students make mistakes and fail. A lot of students said they didn't know what they needed to do to improve. The teachers just didn't help. And that's because, well, first, a few other holistic learning approaches. So students should learn about these mindsets. There's been a lot of research that shows just teaching students about this growth and fixed mindset lets them become aware and helps them improve. Also, teacher training programs should include this. So teachers can teach this and lead by example in the classroom. The other issue is smaller class sizes. When I was doing this research, I had like 40 students in a class. That's a lot of students to get to know everyone and provide the support that they need. So smaller class sizes would help us to understand their unique strengths. And it's necessary for things other than just tests to be valued in the education system. Japan, tests is the main thing, but students said that there should be opportunities to be evaluated in various ways. If we develop our personality and it's appreciated, we'll gain self-confidence and be able to take on new challenges. So just in conclusion, this study highlighted the power of educators and these key influential socializers, their peers, parents, athletes, role models. So sometimes just one key life experience led students down a growth or a fixed mindset. One teacher criticized them in junior high school and forever they were traumatized. This happened to me, I'll explain tomorrow. Or one teacher supported them, gave them lots of help, and they went on to have a growth mindset. So we should be very careful with what we say and do to our students. Normalize mistakes. Mistakes are okay. Make sure that they're not embarrassed, and then they'll share. And learning is a process versus final results. All right, class. Sorry. This is too much. Sorry. Everyone, thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry about the microphone and my voice if it was strange. The QR code is here if you want to see the slides. I went through this very quickly. And if you have any questions later today, I think I went over time, so maybe write them down. I'll be happy to talk about this later today. Thank you very much. Is there time for a question, Zephyr, or did I go over? Yeah. I went over, right?
We wanted to.
Okay, I'll take it later if you have a question. Okay.
We're going to have to dinner together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the next presentation, kiss these onto your hands. So we're going to continue.
But I'm not a mic person, and I don't like my voice on mic, but you know.
What you can do when you have a big lecture theater, I guess. You need to get used to it. We have a small room, but we have a really nice light and mic, so it puts me in a different mood now. But there you go. Hello everyone, I'm Sumeyra, Dr. Sumeyra Yalçıntaş. I'm a lecturer in King's College London, and I teach mainly psychology. And today I wanted to share with you a little bit of from my practice on practical application. what I called innovative teaching. However, it's not quite innovative. It is something we most of the time do, but we just don't name it. Probably practical life application. And this is why I quite like this example, because it's so easy and accessible. When I talk about these applications, I will give examples from live lectures across different levels in undergraduate psychology program in King's College London in the UK. These are the modules I teach across several years since I started there, 2000, well, it's been quite a while. 2021, I started working there and I was teaching psychology and development module, which is a core module for year one psychology students. So the first example is going to come from there, just to give you a bit of background, what I teach. And the second is a close relationships module. This is a module that I developed myself and I ran now for 2 years again in King's College. This is for our final year students. Like I said, it's optional. And then I will talk a bit about why low attendance might be a problem and what we can do. Just bring in a little bit about my own seminars and workshops from what I gained a high or higher attendance than my colleagues, and sort of like practical examples of what I have done went well, so that maybe you can also take some and apply. I should have checked this before, but you can all hear me, right? Yeah, this is something I always do in the lectures too. So actually this example coming from Fink's taxonomy of significant learning, as educational psychologists, we all know this. It is so embedded, I think, in us that we just use it, but we don't know we actually using it. And as you know, it's such a significant learning happens through application, foundational knowledge, learning how to learn, caring, and practical application. So the model suggests that using active techniques, practical integration, and assessment makes learning deeper and meaningful. It also importantly enhances students' motivation to learn, motivation to join, and critical thinking. And we know that its effectiveness in higher education leads to transformational learning and adaptable skills later in life, and more importantly, making education more engaging and relevant for students. So this is why it is important, and this is one simple example of how I did it. So from the practical implication, I took a small lecture for psychology and development module. Like I said, this is a core module. It's taught around between 250 to 300 students. So we have around 200 students most of the time in these big lectures. And this was a part of a small lecture, which we had like a revision week. So I kind of tried to make it a bit more fun. So what I did in this, I basically reminded them a concept that they have learned in the previous weeks. This was just self-regulation, how kids, self-regulate. So it is foundational knowledge within the Fink's taxonomy. And what I did later then, teaching them how we can call self-regulation in nowadays in usual, research footage. And the best way I thought to do it is showing myself. You may have not recognized, but that woman on the pink is me, PhD years, as you can imagine. Barely recognizable, and that's my participant. For confidentiality reasons, you can't see her. But this is what I did, kind of a trick, not only showing my own research, which then they kind of find you more approachable and like, yeah, this is also a real researcher. This is my lecturer, yes, but they also do research in this field, and this is how they do it. More importantly, this was a data collected only a couple of years ago in the UK, so it is very relatable to them, as in terms of culture, but also in terms of the data being new. And I taught them very shortly, this is how we can call self-regulation. This is my PhD. I used, techniques such as storytelling, illustrating how certain games, such as that one is a simple snack delay, basically asking kid to wait for certain amount of time for a desirable snack. In that case, it was a raisin, because raisins are very highly preferable in the UK. And after I showed them, this is how I coded, I explained, and I showed the behavior of the kid, and then I asked them basically, can you now apply this knowledge you just learned and practice the coding on a similar exercise where I again measure self-regulation on a different type of task. This time it was snack delay. Sorry, this time it was what we call crane delay. It wasn't really crane, it was like a colorful, really desirable pens. So this was the same kid, and I used poll app, anonymous poll, for students to contribute and ask, what do you think she will do, just considering what you just learned from the video, the first video. And just a parenthesis, I always use the polls anonymously so that they don't feel, they're going to do it wrong, so they don't have the pressure of being right or wrong answers. We don't see the name of the student, so they have freedom to give their answers. So what happened is, after just 2 trials, back and forth, similar examples, students actually correct responses increased from 60 to 90%, which was a great increase. So it didn't only help them it didn't only make them a more enjoyable learning experience, but their success is also increased. And I also had several positive feedback regarding just this lecture. So at the end of each year, we have module evaluation surveys. Again, these are all anonymous, so we don't know which students had what. And I had some good qualitative feedback just given to this only 15-minute lecture throughout the entire term, that they found that this lecture was really insightful. Another student also said that this was interesting and exciting. So these were all the things that we were trying to tap on with the deep learning, making them finding more exciting and more engaging. So since this worked, I thought, okay, why not try and use it on a year 3 student? So these are final year students. And I taught in my module parent-child relationship. So similarly what I did, I just went through entire theories around parent-child relationship, family psychology, recent research, and then also ending with a note of practical application saying, okay, how we can measure mother and child relationship. And then again, since once you have a PhD, never leaves you, I used my PhD data. So I literally demonstrated them a very short snaps of videos of several mother-child relationship, mother-child play, and then on top of my head, I tried to choose 2 different families. Not that I knew the scores or I looked at the scores, just on top of my head. I was like, okay, this is gonna be the ones that I can see some difference, hopefully. If I don't see the difference, maybe the lecture didn't work well. So I taught them about how we do it, going all through the ethics and everything. I made them rate these 2 families. And the responses were quite different, which made me happy. This is actually the 3rd time I taught this module this term, a couple of weeks ago. And it was again the different responses, which was nice. But also just the exercise itself, they find quite relatable. So these are again some of the feedbacks they provided, such as the topics are related to real life, they're extremely interesting and relevant. Just a parenthesis of attendance here. This is actually a project that I had in mind. I didn't complete it, but it was a big discussion topics within our program, like why attendance is low, how we can increase it, but does attendance even matter? Yes, it matters because we know that it's related to academic achievement, but also it highly contributes to learning experience. But I think sometimes we take it to the heart as educators, like, oh, do they not like my module? There are obviously some practical reasons we might be missing out, such as financial. Some students working part-time also, especially if any colleagues here like teach, for example, in London, commuting is a big problem, and timetable, so on and so forth. But obviously, on top of that, there are things we can do. So what I found in my module was that it was slightly higher than the other year 3 modules, the attendance. So this is why I then turned back to, okay, what did it work and why the attendance was higher, and kind of give this also in our department meeting, maybe things that they can do. And actually, if the content in any of my teaching was related to assessment, obviously the attendance increased from 95 to a big numbers, but this is quite understandable, I guess. An important note here, all the students in this module were placed based on their first preference. So it was, I think, purely their interest in close relationships and trying to find about it. That's why the interest was there, and hence I think they were attending. But there are other things I think worked also well. This is again from that module's evaluation survey. This is run, like I said, at the end of the term, anonymous, and I kind of like tidied them up from somehow qualitative analysis of myself. So these were the actual responses, and when I kind of tidied them up, the common things were that they found me as a lecturer. I taught all my lectures, by the way, all my seminars myself. I have like guest lecturers, but only for 2 weeks. So I think being with me all the time together in person was something really positive. I have to say this is also in-person lectures. So they found me engaging, supportive, approachable, enthusiastic. Obviously, there were things like, yeah, this is an organized module, but interestingly, they found the content relevant, interesting, and engaged. I think most importantly, the environment was described as inclusive and safe learning. I think which then enable them to join more and contribute to discussion. Feel free to ask questions. Again, approachableness was important, and I did try to create some null assessments, which I'm not going to talk too much because we don't have time, which I think they found also interesting. Doing something different than just writing an essay was also, I think, quite nice for them. And then I had some fun and interesting seminars, they said, which then, they find it quite more easy to join. So you may say then, okay, these are all good, and these are the scores. You say they find it inclusive, they find it engaging, yada yada, but how did you do it? I think, reflecting back, I mean, maybe I didn't have this in mind, put it to have this outcome, but reflecting back, what I did was giving them a voice. Because this module was created like 3 years ago, I constantly kept asking them their opinion, their feedback. So any other opportunity, literally just after seminars, face-to-face, asking the class, like, how did it go? Did it work? Did you like the example? But I also had an anonymous, again, outgoing Padlet wall, which they could add their ongoing feedback. And obviously they have, at the end of the year, every other module has to do that. It's like a module evaluation. But what I did differently was like asking them face-to-face every other activity, or things like I had a tiny bit flexibility. I'm not saying everyone can have that, but I had a week 10, which I just, for the lecture, designed as a formative opportunity. So I asked them, do you just want this a formative opportunity for your assessment, or do you want me rather talk about some interesting research followed up by your formative? And the answer was actually the latter one, which is interesting. So they wanted to hear more research, less time for formative assessment. But literally giving them some voice, I think that they felt like I am included. She cares about my opinion. She's asking my opinion. I was a bit cheeky, so I didn't give almost any preparation for most of the seminars because these are final year students. And in King's, we have also a project module, which is a really highly, exhausting modules for most year 3 students. It's most of their time. I think they feel like they cannot join a seminar if they didn't do the preparation. and most of the time they don't do the preparation, you can agree to this. So I think this is why they have the flexibility to join, even if they couldn't do the reading. Again, I try to do real life applications, but for example, also giving some silly examples from my not personal life. For example, this is my pets. I don't have kids, so in a sibling relationship week, I made up a silly example of my cat and my seagull, which then made them think, okay, she's like kind of funny, approachable, or maybe they thought she's crazy, which some of you might thought. But I think it always eases them up to upcoming high content. That seminar was actually on their research proposal, so it was a really highly intellectual content. So starting something silly, I think, made them a bit more like, okay, like we can do it now. This is again regarding safe and inclusive environment, and I'm not going to go too much in that, but in King's, like in psychology, we really care about especially the item on I feel part of a community, and usually, most people struggle to get that one high up. So all scores were quite high, about 4.6, around 5 across the 2 years. And I think one other thing I did, which I forgot to mention, which actually this student feedback nicely kind of summarizes it, because of course it is very relatable. My module, I am lucky, really relatable. Let's just cause relationships. I'm not claiming everyone can integrate this, but it can be also really triggering. And I think giving those trigger warnings is especially important. I have a week just talking about breakups, jealousy, what I call a bit like juicy stuff, which I keep constantly giving, trigger warnings. A week before saying, next week we're going to be talking about this, there might be some sensitive topic, please let me know, you can leave, you don't have to join. But also just on the page itself, again, even that content warning is extremely important, and then I think they feel really ready or just not join if they find it sensitive. This is just the feedback to myself. Of course, this is not saying, oh, this is amazing, do all of these things. There are things I could have added more, which I'm looking for example, to reduce assessment anxiety, having 2 deadlines. Some of the other modules have 2 deadlines, and then they seem to be working. That's something I will try to do. And the last one I'm already doing, office hours and formative opportunities. I think that's all. I'm not sure again, do we have time for a question or?
We can get it during the.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Thank you.
And now we have to just as a last presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the possibility. I'm from the flight, and it was continuing flight. I was in the flight 20 hours at midnight. I started, and now I'm honored to be with you as more than 10th time. Thank you for the possibility. It is my honor and it is my privilege. It is my possibility to talk about the same theme as the whole conference. Whole conference headline is Shaping the Future of Learning, Innovations and Challenges in Education Psychology. And our presentation is about promoting education's social and emotional competence. A pilot study using pre-post design. Behind me, there are two of my colleagues in Estonia. I'm at the University of Tartu, the very famous and old university. And there are also Minni and Anu with me, and I'm Kristi. I should like to start with the aim and then go to the introduction. Therefore, that in this way, it is better to understand what is happened in this research. The aim of the study was to compare 5 core components of social emotional competencies among educators who participated in the in-service training course in 2 time points, at the beginning and at the end of social emotional learning intervention. When we start at the beginning of this conceptual and theoretical and also the methodological history journey of the social emotional competencies as a construct, then it is behind nearly 100 years, with beginning with a concept centralized on the social component of the social intelligence, nearly one century ago. And then it goes to the 90s, when the emotional component of Gardner's theory of multicultural intelligence by establishing interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence. And then in 1990s, the concept follows the integration of social and emotional competencies as a social emotional learning construct. And nowadays, the CASEL model as a multi-dimensional construct that integrates 5 domains: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making is created only 10 years ago, as you already know. What about previous research about social emotional learning interventions? The first week of social emotional learning educational intervention targeted children and youth with promising impacts in terms of developing social and academical score skills, healthy behaviors, and mental health and well-being. In terms of improving relationships, improves homes and social school climate, decreases bullying, and improvements of social and emotional well-being, and so on. The second week of the studies is connected with contemporary intervention having explored, including adults, namely educators, with a primary target group being teachers. Especially social emotional learning interventions have increased exponentially over the last decade worldwide, with promising results in participants' professional well-being and teachers who have social and emotional competencies. There are only 3 approaches in the frame of the social emotional learning interventions. The first is connected with mindfulness based social emotional learning programs in USA education and also among Portuguese elementary school teachers. The second approach connected with group music activities among Chinese colleague students. And the third one is develop online social emotional intervention program, social emotional program for elementary school teachers, who is improving impacts the teachers' social emotional competencies in terms of increasing responsible decision making and also increase of interpersonal relationships among them. What is a gap of the interventions in this area? Although there is social emotional learning interventions seeking directly prompt education, social emotional competencies have increased in the last decade. Only a few interventions, only two, focused on education's multi-component social emotional competencies, and none of the social emotional learning intervention use training program. Now, therefore, the present study evokes new research question. To what extent do Estonian education experience changes in 5 components of social emotional competencies after the intervention of education has finished compared with the beginning of this intervention? We have to focus into fulfilling this research. At first, the social emotional learning intervention was developed in the form of an in-service training course through 5 sessions as 60 hours program for education's career development for 4 months. And secondly, the additional aim of the study was to test the Estonian version of the social emotional competencies assessment battery for adults. English version who is expected 5-factor structure across 5 score social emotional competencies components. The methodology was a longitudinal pre-post study design was to investigate the changes of components of social emotional competencies among educators in Estonia who participated in service education educator social emotional learning training course. And sample consists of 74 teachers and social pedagogues. Also, it's a unique sample who engaged in the intervention and was assessed twice at the beginning and at the end of the course. At first, we developed and fulfilled also the methodology and developed the 5 sectional training components organized as 5 modules who were exactly the same as the interpersonal and interpersonal and also responsible decision-making skills was developed during this course. And we used the 5 mixed group based sessions lasted in every time, not 8 hours following the same structure. At first, there was half of the course, the so-called theoretical part, And as next, there was the practical part. For example, active and creative learning methods like role playing, storytelling, use creative modules like visual arts, music, drama, and movement, and also there was integrating the feedback of the corresponding homework, would give the participants possibility the practice all the theoretical and practical part of this course. And last, what about the results? And first, we confirmed that factor analysis in Estonia confirmed the 5 factors model in previous research in the assessment measure as the social and emotional competence assessment battery for adults. And it shows that it has good fit to the data and suggesting that the measurement model adequately represents the data as was good to measure the social emotional competencies of teachers and social pedagogues. And secondly, as you see in the graphic, 3 and 4 post-test self-reported social and emotional competencies assessment battery for adults scores of educators who participated in the social emotional intervention training course indicated significant improvements in the 5 score social emotional competencies as self-regulation, self-awareness, self-conflict management, positive relationships, and responsible decision-making with high score and statistically significant differences between 2 time points measurements. What it showed conclude, although the longitudinal study, peer pilot study, was not able to determine causality, the preliminary pilot findings suggest that developed and implemented social emotional intervention was a promising program for education's multi-component social and emotional competencies development. Results indicate pre-post changes on all 5 components of education, social and emotional competencies, and in responsible decision making, and also interpersonal and intrapersonal skills have improved. In summary, this study highlights the importance of implementation quality research as a component of social emotional learning intervention as an effective in-service training course program with narrowing the gap between research and practice in improving social educators as we know teachers and social pedagogues social emotional competencies. And lastly, 1 minute and 1 sentence only as a metaphor. Good teachers with high social emotional competencies plant the seeds to the students' head and help them grow. Thank you for attention. Thank you for quick presentation, and it was nice to see you again. Thank you.